The next step is to dry our organic extract. So we've got our organic extract from our previous step. We've done the separation step. We separated it from the aqueous phase. There still will be little amounts of water present. And you might see the bits of water floating on the top, possibly, where a little bit of water has gone through from the separating funnel. Perhaps when we close the separating funnel, a little bit of water went through and we can see it on top. So you may see it, you may not, but there will be some water present. So we want to remove the trace water. And a good way of doing that is to use magnesium sulfate, which is anhydrous. So we add a few spatulafuls of magnesium sulfate. So get out the bottle, put a few spatulas in like this. So give it a swirl around and the magnesium sulfate will stick around the sides of the flask. A question we normally get is, well, how much magnesium sulfate do you add? So you know when there's enough added when the magnesium sulfate freely moves at the bottom of the flask. So you put the magnesium sulfate in. The first spatula you add will probably just stick around the sides of the flask. Add another spatula full and you might get the solid at the bottom then, which is freely moving when you swirl it around. That's when you know you've added enough, because the anhydrous magnesium sulfate will turn to hydrated magnesium sulfate. This is what you see stuck on the flask. But if you keep on adding it, all the water reacts with the anhydrous magnesium sulfate to make hydrated magnesium sulfate. But when all the water is used up, any anhydrous magnesium sulfate you add would just sit at the bottom of the flask, not becoming hydrated magnesium sulfate. So you know all the water has reacted. So this takes usually just a couple of spatulafuls in. So put some in, give it a swirl around. And then you decant the solution into another conical flask. So to separate the magnesium sulfate from the liquid, which is the solvent containing your product, you want to get rid of this magnesium sulfate. So you can decant it, which basically means just pour it into another flask, leaving all the solid behind. So you don't need to do a filtration, but you can decant it. So you decant it into another conical flask. This will remove the magnesium sulfate.